Welcome to the Rainmaker podcast, where we elevate marketing leaders inside and out. I'm your host, Veronica Rami, master marketer, executive leader, and mentor to ambitious marketing leaders wanting to advance their careers. Each episode is filled with genuine, unscripted conversations with some of the world's top marketing experts, accomplished leaders, and industry trailblazers representing brands, both large and small. Our goal with this podcast and everything we do is to help you master your role, nurture your team, prioritize your well-being, and evolve into an industry-leading Rainmaker. This is the Rainmaker podcast. I'm bringing back a friend, someone who, I'm not going to put this mildly, changed my life. So a lot of people ask me how I became a Tony Robbins speaker, and this next guest is a big part of that. His name is Jeremy Gabbert. He is the former chief revenue officer for Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi's mastermind.com company. And now he's the chief revenue officer at Grant Cardone's organization, which is wild. We've become really close friends behind the scenes after him literally being instrumental in my own story. And finally, I was able to pull him on the podcast to talk about how he went from essentially customer service to chief revenue officer at some of the biggest names that you can even imagine, with some of the greatest, highest brand visibilities ever. We get into his story, we get into his growth, we get into like the hardships of this particular arena, the stamina that he says is a requirement to make it as a Rainmaker when you're working with personalities, and a whole bunch of other really fun stuff. So without further ado, let's make it rain with Jeremy Gabbert. Jeremy, welcome to the Rainmaker podcast.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay. I've been wanting to do this for months and months and months. And so I'm so excited this is happening. I hope everybody can feel my enthusiasm because I'm like super psyched. And you're a really good sport because you don't know what I'm going to ask. And I have all these questions. But let's tell people how we even know each other in the first place. Because when I tell people my experience, I compare it to the Hunger Games. Like it was so intense. Before I tell my version, you want to tell your version?
Yeah, I mean, it was a speaker training, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, what I was doing before this was working with Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins. And I remember we were on the search with Pete Vargas about how we could find people who would be able to speak our language, represent the brand, come in and understand what we were doing. And so we held this speaker speak off. And basically, I don't even know if you guys were like under the same impression that we were, but I think it was like, hey, come to our office. And then when you came to our office, we're like, we're going to go ham for 2 days. We're going to teach you all of this stuff. And then you guys are going to basically, fight it out, so to speak, when you get up there. And then we were going to pick it. So could have been set up a lot better, but I think, everything happens for a reason, and you were a great sport on it. And we just became friends after that.
Well, yeah. So when people find out that like I have any type of association with the name Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, it's like, whoa, because obviously those are two significant names with serious brand equity and weight. But then when I tell them the story, I'm like, no, like, let me explain. So like, and I think it was also genius. And I tell other entrepreneurs that I work with, like, you guys basically sold your signature product at the time, right? Like this was like the big thing that Tony and Dean were doing in collaboration, and had thousands of people buy, right? Like you broke the internet. That's, those were those launches of epic proportions. Yeah. And then you asked your own members, you basically went within the walls of your paid customers and said, hey, you're bought into this. If not, you literally physically wouldn't have bought into this. So we're bought in mentally and actually financially. But we're also going to be assembling an Avengers team to speak on stages to share this message further, because there's so many opportunities and there's only so few people, and Tony and Dean can't do it. So we're going to put together this elite speaker team, and we're going to only ask our paid customers if they would like to apply. So that was number one of the coolest things to source from your own people, because we're bought into your mission and your vision, obviously.
Yep.
Then it was like 500, 600 people that applied. I got ambitious. I applied. And then it was like, what, the top 20 or top 30 that we could come to Scottsdale, Arizona. But the way that it was positioned was like, we got it. So then when we showed up, we're all like, we're here, we did it. This is like so exciting. You're like, surprise, there's only gonna be like 5 of you. And so this room of 20, 30 some people, actually we got to whittle it down to only 5. Buckle up. And then that's what then led to the Hunger Games analogy for the next 2-3 days, because people got real nice and then they got real not nice real fast.
You guys did amazing, though. It was great. I have a lot of great friendships from that.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and then of course the timing of this, because this was like what, December 2019.
Hmm.
So then I found out I made it to the top, whatever. We got flown out. It goes, professional speaking training by Pat Quinn. It was really in Milwaukee. It was really
Yeah,
exciting. What was that? January, February, and then like the world shut down in March 2020.
yeah, wild.
So there goes all the physical stages. Everything went virtual. And now this elite speaking team was like the elite Zoom
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
But yeah, that's where you and I met. And I just, one, I think my first impression of you, I don't know if I've ever told you this, I'm like, damn, you're so young and yet chief revenue officer for Dean Graziosi. Is like, there's a story. There's like, this is impressive. And I want to know how.
Hmm.
So, like, how did you go from whatever it is you went? I'm like, I'm on your LinkedIn. I'm like, what? Client relations and content manager in Missouri
Yeah.
to being chief revenue officer at mastermind.com to the degree that you feel comfortable sharing. Like, what's the story?
Yeah, I'm an open book. I mean, to save a bunch of time. Long story short,
Sure.
I my neighbor back in Kansas City ran
Mm-hmm.
all of the back end stuff for Dean and a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
different guys, Anthony Morrison, Jim Banks. And so when I got laid off as a light duty mechanic, I had to have a job because I was still going to high school half
Mm-hmm.
the day and this. So I went over to Steve and I was like, Steve, I need to cash in my karma chips. We always had a great, relationship. And he's like, great, you're hired. I already know your work ethic. So I got hired as just like customer service rep when you would call and book or order a book from Dean or Anthony Morrison on an infomercial, you get me. And I just worked my way up. I started as a customer service rep, and then I started managing the customer service. Then I started to take on some different projects, and I started to go through these courses because just like what was the reason why we picked you guys for the KBB speaking team was because you guys had already understood the
Yeah.
content. It'd be a lot easier to have you help us. So I started to go through this content because I'm like, if I can understand the content, I can serve the clients
Mm-hmm.
better. Dean's was a great program. Did my first real estate deal when I was 17, and I was kind of hooked from there. And so anything that came down from the Arizona office, I was like, I will
Mm-hmm.
take. So long story short, ended up taking a bunch of stuff. He was like, I don't even know who this Jeremy Gabbert kid is in Kearney, Missouri. So he flew out and met me. He's like, my team always talks about you. I need you on my team. So, he showed up in his private jet.
Wow. Yeah.
He rolled in the Escalade. I'm from a small town of 2,500 people. So there was two people. There was one person that I looked up to. His name is Steve Thorne, because he had a Range Rover and an Escalade. Everybody else just had regular cars. So I was like, I don't know what Steve does, but I want to be like Steve. So then Dean showed up, and I was like, man, this is amazing. I would have been 20 at the time, and he's like, I want
Yeah.
you on my team. So I moved out. Just literally 3 months later, took a job here. It's actually a pay cut because the cost of living is way different in Scottsdale than it is in Kansas City.
Sure.
And just worked my way up. Went from content to project manager. Was running CEO for his company for a while. Realized that I didn't want to do everything. I wanted to do more on the revenue side, sales, marketing, and really stay in my unique ability and my like skill set. So yeah. So when we started mastermind.com and did the whole thing, did chief revenue officer for a while, and yeah, it was a fun transition.
Well, okay, so there's a couple things that are just like remarkable in your story. Number one, the way that you described Dean coming to you with his private jet and his car. I'm like, what is like the scene from The Bachelor? He like shows up, you're like the helicopter comes in, rose petals get thrown out the door. But that's, I mean, good on him to recognize really
Totally.
hungry, proactive talent, young talent, and then invest in it, right? As opposed to buying somebody who has a double MBA off the shelf, whatever,
Mhm.
whatever. No, he saw that you had gumption and, you wanted more responsibilities. No one told you to do stuff. You just started doing it proactively out of interest, but also, I'm sure, ambition.
Mhm.
And so here you are just, I mean, just feeding yourself. I mean, literally being a pupil and then also being a hungry professional. And then you rise to the ranks of chief revenue officer. And then the other thing that strikes me in your story, and this is something that I want to point out because I think this is like such a mirage, like misconception. Some of the best marketers, the best rainmakers on the planet are not these like 15-year marketing pedigree professionals.
Mhm.
Like some of the most successful rainmakers that I even have in the programs that I run are like former school teachers and like VAs and just, but man, they have grit, they have resourcefulness, they have a high emotional intelligence. That's one thing that I've noticed time and time again because marketing is empathy.
Hmm.
right? Like great marketing is being persuasive. And so like that comes with a variety of other skills and talents and qualities. You didn't study marketing formally. Like talk to me about your marketing education because it's a self-education. How did you drink from the fire hydrant that was digital marketing? Because that's really what Dean is.
Yeah, I mean, school wasn't for me. So that was like, going through courses and going through books. I don't even know how I got into that space. I just literally, I stumbled upon it and I was like, oh, well, if we're
Mm-hmm.
selling, I mean, when we were doing infomercials, we were selling 8,000 books a week. And I'm like, all right, if we're selling this many books, like this might be the new way that people learn. And it's funny that we ended up getting into mastermind.com and kind of creating the new way to self-education. But that was me. Learning from Dean was awesome. He's a genius at what he does. And I think the biggest thing that I got from him was understanding, like you said, the emotional intelligence and just social cues and like understanding the persuasion. Because
Yes.
when you're on an infomercial, like it's not like people just watch a full infomercial. Like
Right.
the greatest thing Dean taught me was you have to assume that people are only going to watch 5 minutes of this infomercial because they're clicking through. And that's why infomercial cycle is because it's not just like one big long 28-minute show. It's like three different segments and it's just rotating. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
because you never know if people are going to be at the end of the segment, the beginning of the segment, and vice versa. So first, it's like understanding how people connect and consume. And so that was a great thing. And then we shifted over to digital and obviously got into Facebook and YouTube and all of these things. But my journey to marketing was just doing it. It was having, you said you had the grit, had the, intelligence to understand how people learn and why they learn and what gets them. But the other thing was stamina. Because at the end of the day, the only type of marketing that doesn't work is the stuff that you quit on. There's no campaign. There was nothing out there that if you at least have the like, and this comes from Dean, like the marketing stamina,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be able to figure that out. Because at the end of the day, everything can be tweaked, everything can be optimized. But if you quit on it, that's the only one that you're actually going to lose your money on, lose your effort on.
It's really interesting. Okay, we're just going to take a beat on this because this is really interesting to me. And we talk a lot about this with our Rainmakers. So, CEOs are not the only ones that struggle with imposter syndrome. Anytime you're in a significant leadership position where your responsibility is revenue generation, and let's say the campaign didn't go off, the launch didn't perform, the funnel didn't work, what we notice in our Rainmakers who take their responsibility so seriously is like a really significant psychological, like gut punch. And if we're not careful, the spiral of like, well, maybe I'm not that a fit, like maybe I'm not a good marketer, maybe I'm not meant to be a rainmaker, maybe like so that's interesting that you bring up stamina because I think there's so many marketers that quit before it gets good.
100%. It's the 3 feet from gold. One thing that I think like that I don't have is I don't have emotion when it comes to running campaigns or this. Granted, because I've worked with brands and companies and people that have cash flow, and obviously I've never been down to my bottom dollar trying to make something work. And at the end of the day, I would not be running a Facebook ad if I was down to my bottom dollar. I'd be doing grassroots traditional marketing, getting out there, door knocking, and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
But
Yeah.
one thing, and I think it's probably because I was groomed in the Tony world, is I was groomed to, not have emotion in anything. So when a campaign is not working, it's not like, oh crap, like we're doomed or we have like, I just have a set of parameters that I look at and a set of questions. I was literally just teaching, we have so at Cardone Ventures is where I'm at now. We got about $1 billion under management right now with our strategic business unit. And I was just talking with a bunch of business owners over there. And I said, the only thing about marketing and sales is you got to have the numbers and you got to have the data, and then you got to understand what you're looking at and ask the right questions because it's accumulative. If something is not working, there's just a piece in there that's not working. If you don't have visits to your page, look at your flow, look
Sure.
at your traffic, look at the message that you're doing. If you get to a page and it's not converting, then look at the page. If it's getting conversions and you're not getting that back end deal or whatever it is, look at your sales process. How quick are they following up with the lead? Are they actively working that multiple times? Like there's no emotion on it. And I know that, like you said, like a lot of people will quit because they can't differentiate the two. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I've been blessed enough to be groomed in this industry to like
Mm-hmm.
understand that the only emotion you should probably have, this comes from Brandon Dawson, is the celebration of business. Like everything else is
Mm.
just something you just got to look at.
I'm really glad that you bring this up for many reasons, but I think also what I do want to talk about because you alluded to this. So you're no longer with Dean. You're now working for Grant Cardone, right?
I am.
That was as a friend on the outside. I was like, ooh, like we're going from one significant personality to another significant personality, and of course they were also colleagues and friends. And so, and I'm not going to ask anything uncomfortable, but like when you're in the Rainmaker position and you're starting to have that desire to maybe spread your wings, this is where it can get really like you have to be very careful
Hmm.
because you never want to offend the hand that fed you for
Yep.
so long and that was so good to you and that took you under their wing and like brought you up. And there's enormous sense of not just like admiration, loyalty, but like affection and love and care. But then at the end of the day, like no, none of us are going to have like one person's name on our gravestone of career. Like that's just not how this works, especially our generation. That's just not. We want to keep learning. We want to keep being challenged. And so like how did you switch? How did you make the jump from one significant organization to another? One that you were super entrenched in and super in, and then now, I mean, again, you're the chief revenue officer at this new. We're like, come on now, like you're just a double hitter. Like, how'd you do it? And what, more importantly, more than how you did it, what would you advise other Rainmakers who feel like a little bit maybe trapped or like, I don't want to do any kind of wrong to right to the people that have been right to me?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I wasn't looking. I
Okay.
wasn't at all. That's the truth. And Jared Glant,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he's a good dude. We were talking for 5 years on and off. Like he was the same thing for Grant that I was for Dean and
Mm-hmm.
Tony. So we had very parallel lives, and he just came out and we sat down. We had a double date with our wives, and he was just like, "Hey, are you open to an opportunity?" I'm like, "I'm always open to an opportunity, but
Sure.
I'm not saying I'm going to take it. I get offers all the time, right? I'm already working with two guys that I like and I love doing it. And so,
Yeah.
you know, the thing at the end of the day, they just presented an offer that I couldn't refuse. It was to a different demographic. It was to a bigger organization. It was to a different brand that just intrigued me. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was a great shift for me. It made me grow in multiple areas. I mean, I thought that I was growing with Dean and Tony, which I was, but it's just different. Like when it was a complete
Yeah.
shock. I mean, if you see Dean and Tony on the internet and you see Grant and Brandon, they're wildly different worlds, different concepts, different clients, different demographics. And so it stretched me in a very good way in multiple areas and multiple opportunities. And at the end of the day, you know, I left that company with like, I hired a lot of those people in that
Mm-hmm.
company.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was working there. My
Yeah.
brother is
Mm-hmm.
working there. I hired my other brother. So it's a very, and my best friend in my marriage. So at the end of the day, I knew I didn't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
And there was multiple things that, you know, I didn't care about, and I just left. And I was like, hey, this is what, and I mean that in a good way. There was multiple things that I had there that I helped build, that I was like, I want you guys to have all this. I want this to be
Mm,
the most successful transition. I gave them as much time as they really wanted
that's
to.
fantastic.
I helped find somebody, or at least develop somebody into that. I'm still like, I literally, I get a text message, I think like 3-4 months ago from a client. I still helped them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't ever want to rock that boat. And so I would say, you know, if you're looking at changing, then obviously just look at the other things that, if you're replacing yourself, replace yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's all leadership is like, you should be able to want to develop somebody to replace you so that you can elevate. And as you're continuing to do that, you're either doing that to elevate yourself in the company, or you're doing that to potentially exit the company and do something for your own, or find
Yeah.
another company. But just don't rock the boat. Be a good human.
Yeah.
And like, I was just very selfless, at least in my eyes, maybe not in other people's eyes, but like in my eyes, I was like, I just want whatever's right, because my wife did work there. My brother still works there. So
Yeah.
it's very close to me, and I want nothing but good things for them. So
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing that. Second of all, yes, like at the end of the day, like you're the one that has to stand before the mirror. You're the one that measures yourself against your own values. You know, were you in your own integrity? Were you being as honest and true to your personal values? Whether somebody agrees with it or not, it doesn't matter. Like it's you with you, right?
mhm.
And I'm the same way. Like when I left my last big corporate position, it was October 2017. I started like seeding them that it was coming. All right. Cause I just didn't want it to be like this huge, like, you know, cold water in the face shock type of an experience. And I had like, to your point, I mean, I was this little queen bee in my, you know, my domain, and I had hired all these, you know, people, and like, you know, I took it really, really serious. So I wanted to do right for the team that I was leaving behind in somebody else's hands. And I also wanted to make sure that I did right for the people that I was saying goodbye to after 4 incredible years in stock and this and that. I mean, like, right. And I still have incredible relationships. Every time I go out to Utah, I usually will stop by the office and like say hi. Like, because it was one of the most beautiful times, 4 years of my life. I had my two kids there. Like, I grew up there in many ways. And so I forever will have this affection, but I still pay it forward as much as possible. And I think that has always served me. And I'm like you, like when people reach back out to me, I'm happy to help no matter what. So like that will serve you. Generosity and kindness will always serve you.
Yeah, 100%.
Hey Rainmakers, it's Veronica, and we'll get back to today's episode. But before that, I have an exciting invitation for all of you aspiring, ambitious marketing leaders. If you are serious about advancing your career in marketing and you're looking for an expert to give you some personal insights, guidance, tips, then I'm going to invite you to schedule a free Pathway to Promotion call with me. This is a special one-on-one call with just you and me to discuss your current roadblocks in your career, your long-term aspirations and ambition, and the next best step for you and your personal promotion. Head to pathwaycall.com or click the link in my show notes to schedule your free Pathway to Promotion call. Now back to today's episode. Okay, so now here we are in this, 10x opportunity. Play on words. It is radically different, not just their personal brands and like their personas, but radically different business structures, who they're appealing to, how they show up, how they serve. It looks like a decent learning curve, a bigger mountain to hike and climb. How have you navigated? What has come easy to you? What has been challenging for you? Where are you feeling the most stretch?
Great question. So I like, this is technically my second job, like almost ever. Like I
Yeah.
worked with
Yeah.
Dean until 17 to
Yeah.
30, and then I've been with Cardone Ventures for the last 2 years. So I think the biggest thing was like coming from a company that I not only helped build, but like from the ground up. Like I knew everything there had to be about a lot of those companies and all the people that we used to work with and influencers over there. I think the biggest thing here was coming in at such a a C-suite level opportunity and just getting to know. I mean, when I came in, we were doing 50 million bucks a year, 100 employees, and so it was just like hit the ground sprinting. Like my first week was immersed into one of our events called 10x 360. It's where all the clients come to like really learn about the business. And so it was the concepts and being able to build the plane as we're flying it, because when I came in, there wasn't a lot of front end marketing from the Cardone Ventures side. We basically just leveraged Grant and his company because his brand was so big. But so when I came in, I started to focus on the front end, top of funnel stuff for Cardone Ventures specifically. So it was literally trying to learn methodologies and core concepts, and then trying to like create a funnel on top, and then build a team, because I ended up coming in and transitioning most of the team. Just they weren't up to par, and they were great marketers. They just weren't direct response really centric. And so I think the biggest thing was just learning a company that was at this size so quickly. And there's still stuff like I'm like, oh, this is great. I should have learned this 6 months ago, right? And I'm just learning as I go because I started just so quickly. But it's been great. I mean, now it's just like building and having the stamina. Like, I probably do way too much, as we all do. I got a bunch of direct reports, and probably 15 right now. There's 100 people in the organization that roll up to me, which is great. All marketing, sales. Same thing that I have always done. It's just at a different level. So it's stretched me as a leader. It stretched me as a friend, a strategist, and being able to just always be on. Like it is something that feeds the rest of this company. And so heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? And so it's it's a lot of responsibility, but it's all impactful because of the people here. Like when I first started, it was about the money. It was about getting the Escalade. It was about the private jets. Like that's what sparked me to get into
You're
it.
17, 18.
Yeah. And then as I've evolved, it's now the team. Now it's like we have 220 people here just on Cardone Ventures, and it's amazing to be able to see the growth and what we're able to provide for everybody involved. And they're making more money. They're happy. They're able to, elevate themselves, and the why is different now.
I'm going to ask a really direct question.
Yeah.
How the hell do you stay sane? Like, and I mean that like, or you're like, oh, my secret is cold plunging, but like legitimately, because like we're mental athletes. I find Rainmakers, we are mental athletes, and we don't get off seasons like the NFL athletes do. Like we are constantly always on, and it is a very mentally strenuous role to be on all the time, to have that $10 million idea in that one meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, like how do you do it legitimately without the reputation that that follows this role, which is the burnout, the churn out, the turnout? Like how have you done it? Because everybody has a different answer. What's your secret to sustainability?
Yeah, I think it's three things. One, it's building the team. Like
Sure.
the team is everything. Like there's no I in team. It's you're going to be an individual contributor until you get to 3 million or 4 million or whatever, like you can be. But then after that, like you have to start, especially if you're like 8 to 10, you have to really start building that team and that senior leadership team. And so if it wasn't for the team here, like I would not be able
Sure.
to do it, because I'm also helping run 10x Health too. So it's like 10x Health, it's Cardone Ventures, and it's like if it wasn't for the team, this would not be possible. The second thing is the routines. I wake
Yeah.
up every morning at 5:30. I go to the gym. I go to lift weights, sauna, cold plunge, walk on the treadmill. The treadmill is like my favorite time. If you follow me on social, like I am disciplined on posting it because it's for me. It's not for anybody else. It's for me. I get on there for 30 minutes, partially because some of my team is in East Coast. So
Yeah.
if I don't start doing emails at 7 o'clock in the morning, they already have 2.5 hours on me.
Yeah, they're already
So,
up.
so that is like, if I don't do that in the morning, I already feel discombobulated a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And not just as clear. So I do that 7 days a week, and I treat my weekends just like I treat my weekdays. Like I still get up at 5:30, maybe 6:30. I'll sleep in an hour, but
Mm-hmm.
it's routine. And then the third thing is when you have a good team and you have a good foundation,
Mm-hmm.
there's never going to be one thing that blows something up. Like
Sure.
Grant talks about it all the time. There's not one thing that blows a deal. Like it's true. So I think that has allowed me to not have to be on edge all the time. Like, what's the new campaign? What's this? It's like
Mm.
the great thing is that when you have a working model and you know your numbers and you know that your customer journey or your value ladder, what Russell would call it, like is actually there,
Sure.
it's a lot easier to come up with front end campaigns because you're not worried about everything else. Like what most people in this space have problems with is they either don't have a front end, they have a strong back end, or they have a strong front end and they don't have a back end.
Sure.
That's the thing, is like when you actually have a good product, you can fulfill on it, you have a back end that allows you to increase your lifetime value of your customer. And so you feel good whenever you have leads coming in, whether you're profitable or not. Then like we have like 10 campaigns right now that are literally just sitting on the sidelines right now until one of our campaigns fatigue and we'll be ready to bump that up. So it's like just the preparation on this and understanding that you have a good nest egg, that the ship's not going to go down if a campaign fatigues and you can't get something up and running for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, you sound like you're talking about like an investment portfolio. It's like, it's just you're well rounded, well diversified, so that there is no make or break situations,
Mm-hmm.
which, is terrifying. But gosh, it makes me think about so many business owners that live in this kind of feast or famine, make or break launch, make or break funnel, make or break campaign, make or break team member. And it's like you're just setting yourself up for failure before you even get started. But it seems to me that you guys just like are as efficient as all get out and like are just already not plan A, but like plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like you're already, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's just like really good counsel that I think a lot of rainmakers can hear. Like when you're, regardless of the size of company that you're associated with, and regardless of the amount of budget and campaign size and whatever, don't ever just have plan A, plan all the way through F, because it is. I think marketing is just you're being a scientist. Everything's a hypothesis until you try it, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the fun part, letting data guide you as opposed to the drama, which is something that a good friend of mine always says. Okay, I could keep asking you questions, but I won't because I know you're extremely busy and you're running all these enormous companies and divisions. I let the guests ask me their final question. So now I'm like really interested to see what you'd like to ask me to kind of finish off our special podcast.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the time. I know that it's been a while to try to book this, but
Yeah,
super
you're so
excited to be
busy.
here. And it's been great. I've seen you from afar. We've always stayed connected. So thank you for allowing me to be on here. So I would say the question that I have for you is because you are in this industry, you are seeing a lot more probably visibility when it comes to different people's companies and
Mhm.
different influencers and different direct response models. Is where do you see this industry going, especially with all these other things with AI and everything else kind of coming into the marketplace? Because I know what we're doing over here and it's crazy. I'm just curious on what you're seeing from your side.
I've been thinking about this a lot because, there's always like little micro changes or micro shifts that happen in an undercurrent of an industry. Like it doesn't matter what industry you're, whether it's the health and fitness industry or it's the online personality game, which is obviously like where we kind of met each other. So there's always little micro things that are happening. But I do feel like there is this macro shift to the ocean current that is happening for personalities. It's like it's not a coincidence that it's also on the on the side of AI as well.
Yeah.
Because now you can literally have like deep fakes of your voice that like Veronica is doing a podcast, but Veronica's really not doing a podcast, right? It's AI that's doing podcasts or creating content. And so the proficiency and the speed in which content is blasting all over the place is like, that's not where you're going to be able to win. And that's not where we are going to compete. Like it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting to me, and this is something like you kind of alluded to it about like traditional marketing or like good fundamentals, like marketing and sales is still like you can't skip over the good fundamentals. And so one of the things that I have been communicating with a lot of my private clients or my own members that happen to be the attractive character of their companies or the primary spokesperson for the organization, like they are the Chihuahua for Taco Bell, like it's them, right? I wish they would bring that Chihuahua back, but isn't so much like how much content can you pour out of your pores? It's more like how can we make sure that in every single marketing asset, every single funnel, every single interaction, that people can see or hear you at all times.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that like at the end of the day, and this is something that I learned when I was studying speaking, when I worked with Michael Port and Amy Port from Heroic Public Speaking, one of the things that Michael said was like, you don't have to say anything different to make a difference. And I even think about like the greatest religions in the world, like messenger matters, even if we're saying very similar messages. And so like I think sometimes there's a lot of emphasis on like direct response copywriting and the perfect headline and the perfect hook, which I'm not discrediting. It can make or break an ad campaign. I'm not saying that it's not important. But what I am saying is that the messenger equity, seeing someone, hearing someone, feeling someone is like the thing. And when you focus on the messenger equity, it doesn't actually matter what you're selling because there will always be enough for everyone, because it really comes down to whether or not somebody feels a connection to Veronica or a connection to Jeremy or a connection to Grant versus Dean. Like that's really, it's to me, the equity in the messenger.
Yeah. I literally just had this conversation with somebody last night.
Stop it. You're copying me.
It was like, I used to always like growing up, it's like, when you do a webinar, you have to start right at the time.
Yeah.
All the testimonials that come in and you got to like pull on the opening hook and then you can't pitch until 45 minutes.
45 minutes. Yeah.
And after that pitch, then you got to like bring in a sizzle reel so that people have time to buy. And then also after that, you come back for like, it was always to a T, which I'm not taking that away from anything.
Yeah, it works.
Like it does work. But what I have found is because like Grant is just a like 10x everything, be unreasonable, go against the grain. Like I've been on webinars with Grant where he pitches 5 minutes in. I've been at events with Grant where he puts a seat drop day one, morning one, and it was our best event. So I think the biggest thing is one, split testing, like just making sure that you're testing everything. We did 110 live events last year, so we test a lot, right?
Holy cow.
I know. But going back to what you had talked about of the message is, one of Grant's marketing commitments is assume that nobody saw it. So the more that you can actually get out there, the better. And I think with AI, it's allowing us to leverage computer learning and all of these things to multi-purpose one piece of content. And literally you can take a video, take this podcast, transcribe it, and we could probably write 30 blog posts and 200 social media captions and all of these other things. And now I like to say it's like, it's not only the quantity, but it's the quality of it too. And it's just like, you got to get out there, you got to be seen, you got to be omnipresent, but then also it's the message that really matters. And if you're speaking to that person, AI has just allowed it to be easier to leverage yourself. And then the difference, I think, even though you didn't ask me my opinion, but what I think is AI, every room that I'm in, I've been asking it from stages, like who in here is using AI? It's usually about 10 to 15% of the room. It's not a lot. Then I show them ChatGPT, the free version. It's like mind blown.
Yeah.
And pretty soon it's going to get 40% of the rooms, 50% of the rooms, and probably eventually in a couple of years, it's going to be 80% of the rooms. And the difference between this is, when people are using AI, like I can tell when my team sends me copy that's been ChatGPT and they haven't actually put their spin on it. like when people use the word fortify. Like I never used the word fortify on landing pages until ChatGPT came out. Like there's certain words that and if you're
That's
actually
so
looking at
funny.
it, you'll see. But what's going to be the difference is allowing ChatGPT or AI or whatever to get you 80% of the way, and then the marketer, whoever is writing the copy, take it the extra 20% because your people are already understanding that they're not connecting as much, or they will because they're going to know it's AI.
It's really interesting that even in your rooms, you're finding it that it's less than 25% that are raising their hands for ChatGPT. Interesting, because I think the online business owners that I work with, I would be a greater percentage. Everybody's kind of like
100%.
ChatGPT.
Now we're a lot more
Small
service
business
based.
owners.
Small business owners, HVAC, roofing, flooring. Now we do have some
Yeah.
digital e-coms that come through, but the majority of our businesses that we talk with are service based.
But it's funny. So bringing up like messenger versus message and stuff, and like now we're really going. This is what happens when you get two marketers together. But like there's a reason when I was a little girl that I liked Belle from Beauty and the Beast the most. It's because she was the only brunette and she read books. And guess what? I was brunette and I like to read books, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like versus any of the other characters. And so for me, like when I study great marketing, I look at like Disney or the NFL. Like they're some of the best marketers I've ever seen in my entire life. The way that they're able to connect an audience to a character, to a messenger, to like, right? Even if it's the same damn script every single time,
Mm-hmm.
but you're like, I'm Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift, like there's just so much. And again, I just think it goes back to like, even with the emergence of more AI and technology and Alexa and Siri and all of these, I mean, like it's scary to be honest with you, these OnlyFans accounts that are AIs and they're making millions of dollars. But at the end of the day, like a human's still a human and a human likes and craves connection to another
Yep.
human being. And so like, for me, if you want to stand out, you have to kind of relook at your prospect journey or your customer journey. And you have to ask the question, like, where in this journey or in these marketing assets that compile this journey, are we making sure that there's a connection to the messenger? And so that's something that I'm like re-looking at everything that we're doing and advising my clients to do as well. Okay. Jeremy, thank you so much for being on today's Rainmaker podcast. It is a joy. You are a phenomenal human being. I love you and your wife very much. I'm so grateful that my Hunger Games experience connected us and now we're friends. And I just want to say thank you for being on today's Rainmaker podcast.
Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for joining us on today's Rainmaker podcast. Marketers help other marketers. So if there's a marketer in your life who could really use a new perspective in a way that helps them advance their career, please pass this episode forward, share, leave us a review. Everything helps as we embark on helping as many marketers elevate themselves inside and out. You can always visit veronicarami.com for today's show notes, additional links to some free resources and tools for you to help you advance your career. You can always connect with us on social media at ViaRami if you want more behind the scenes or a way for us to connect personally. Until next time, my friends, make it rain.